Hi, I'm James Morris, the Communications Manager for Back from the Brink, and I'm here with Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil Aldridge, and I'm the filmmaker and producer of the Back from the Brink films shot in partnership with Wildscreen.
And we have just finished watching the Shrill Carder Bee video, which I assume you have as well. If you haven't, go watch it, come back, watch this one. Or watch this one first, it'd be weird, but you can do. Shrill Carder Bee, great species and really beautiful film.
Thank you.
The Shrill Carder Bee is kind of the visible tip of an iceberg of bumblebee, bee, pollinator loss across Britain, but it's probably about the rarest bumblebee in England. Obviously up in sort of north of Scotland, you've got the great yellow bumblebee, which was formerly found in England and has now sort of dropped off the edge, and we have got some extinct bumblebees.
It was one of those ones that we sort of slightly skirted around it in the film, but fundamentally the bees and pollinators particularly are important, as we try to show in the film, in terms of their relationship with land managers and landowners and farmers, in terms of the food that we produce, but also just that they're in real trouble.
So the Shrill Carder Bee was once sort of pretty widespread across southern England, I think as far north as Yorkshire and the Humber. And presently within England has retracted to, I think, 3 population centres. Somerset, where you filmed this one, sort of North Kent and South Essex, which is where the other strand of our Shrill Carder Bee project. So we have, the whole thing is led by Bumblebee Conservation, and we have a wonderful bumblebee conservation officer working on the Somerset population, and then we have a bug life person working on the Essex and North Kent population there. And then the third population is Salisbury Plain, where it's difficult to access, difficult to do any work on, lest you get run over by a tank. But we assume that they're still surviving there.
What was fascinating was that we really struggled in Somerset to find some bees. We were very lucky the very first day we went. We got there, and the first conversations we're having with the volunteers on the site at Light's Carey Manor from the National Trust, they were saying, well, yeah, we've not really seen one in a couple of months now. I think, okay, so I think they'd seen 4 that year already in that first part of the season, and then I think we found 7, I think, just that day. Sometimes, of course, the theory is that the more people looking, you might find them, but I think the general consensus is we were exceptionally lucky, very fortunate, and it was great to be able to film them in Somerset, and then to have gone to see them in London as well, because it was very, very different, where we almost tripped over them in terms of the number of them. And it's one of those things that if you haven't had the initial conversation with the project officer who's kind of prepares your expectations, of course the first one you see, you want to film it straight away, because I just realised that actually we did have a few subsequent trips down to Somerset and not see any bees at all. So when I got to the London site, my inclination was like, there's a bee, quick, film it. And she's like, oh no, you'll find a lot more. And we wandered off across this really bizarre site, which I believe it was put aside as an old oil storage facility, and
was this Canvywick? Yes, which is a joint RSPB bug life reserve in which this bumblebee conservation project is taking place. Lovely mixture of organisations.
These big weird concrete circles, which were the old
with the bases for
with the base for the storage, the oil storage, and and just broken up, and they seem to be enjoying the broken up concrete areas where some of the I think some of the males, by the time we got to film there, the males had been kicked out of the nests, and the males were taking refuge underneath some of that broken up concrete. So again, it was amazing to see how this sort of strangely man-made landscape was actually benefiting one of these, the rarest species in England, really.
Yeah. So and the contrast with Somerset, which of course you see in the film, is that's a very kind of sort of traditional pastoral, you'd say very English kind of landscape, farmland and arable margins and so on. And then that contrast where in Essex and North Kent, where it's what some people might view as wasteland.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's full of all these kind of like wild weedy pea plants, and it's great for the Shrill Carder Bee.
It's almost treated as wasteland. You literally walking around dodging dog poo the entire time. But I think people just think, well, there's nothing special about this place, which is just bizarre because the wildlife there was fantastic, right on the edge of the Thames. But no, the site in Somerset, though, was just wonderfully rich. Managed to film hawk moths and all kinds of other species while we were there. But yeah, few and far between on the bees. But to see them feeding on the red Bartsia flower, which you see briefly in the film.
Oh, yeah, the kind of droopy.
Yes, the Shrill Carder is one of the few that can access that because of that long tongue that Sophie mentions in the film. So to be able to capture that was great, because that really showed that relationship between a certain type of flower and a very specialised bee.
Were you ever told why it was called a Shrill Carder Bee?
Because of the pitch.
The pitch, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a high-pitched buzz.
So there is the common carder bee or carder bumblebee, which is widespread.
Which we saw quite a few of.
You're right.
And then realise you start filming and then you go, oh no, it's not. Nothing against the common carder bee, but we did film quite a lot of common carder bees.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently buzzes at a higher pitch than a carder bee.
Yeah, to capture them flying. Of course, while they're flying is while they're making that high-pitched noise that gives them their name, but to actually capture them and keep them on screen long enough for people to enjoy watching them, and there was a very specific choice of sort of camera operation, the camera movement and lens choice, just going for that wide-angle shot, but getting quite close to them and filming it in slow motion, and then sometimes as well into the lights, just to give that kind of dreamy effect to it, really.
I think dreamy is exactly that word. I think it's one of the kind of closing shots. You've got a Shrill Carder Bee close up, and then I presume another Shrill Carder Bee or another bumblebee, and you've kind of got one moving around in front, one kind of blurred out in the background in that kind of vista of flowers. That looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was something that we specifically talked about and decided it would work really well if we had the luxury to work with bees long enough. And that's why I was mentioning about how many common carders we filmed, because you usually just see a bee and start filming and then idea it while you're filming. You don't wait to idea it, because by the time you've done that and you then hit record, usually by that time the bee's moved on. Yeah,
that's one thing I've learned from working on this project, is actually bumblebees are a lot harder to identify than you think. And I think part of that is because they've got the queens and the workers and the males, and each of those has colour, different patterns, which then overlap with other species, males, workers, queens.
The reason we found that the common carder so difficult is because certainly later in the season, when they'd lost some of the hair on the back between their wings, that skin there was quite dark.
So it starts to look like
the back, because that kind of saddle that the Shrill Carder has on its back with that black band is very diagnostic, but the common carders were almost copying them as far as we were concerned.
So what the Shrill Carder Bee project is trying to do in Somerset is there's obviously a lot of work with landowners such as like National Trust at Lightscarry Manor and other private landowners, and really making them aware of they have this wonderful, rare, beautiful, fantastic bumblebee on their land, and how sparing a little bit of weedy margin can do so much for them. And then the complete contrast over in Essex, it's trying to get people to look at what they might have formerly viewed as wasteland, and saying, let's not be too tidy with it. And I think there's this kind of this feeling that some people have about tidying things up, neatening things up, getting rid of the weeds and so on. In fact, that's exactly what the Shrill Carder Bee is looking for in that habitat.
I think particularly when it comes to bees and as well, people think they see them in their gardens, so therefore they assume that they need tidy space. That's what bees like and what they need. Obviously, there are so many different species of bee, but also different bees respond differently to different types of sort of the way habitats have been managed and the way gardens are managed, but also they have their preferences in terms of the different flowers as well.
It's interesting. We often get asked, here at Back from the Brink, what can I do in my garden for Back from the Brink species? And generally the answer is there is very little you can do in your garden for Back from the Brink species, because we're talking about species that are so close to the edge, so rare, so restricted that, they're generally not living in gardens or they're not near gardens. But really, there is still so much that can be done for species that have not yet got that rare, by having a lovely mixture of nectar-rich plants, native plants, that little bit of long grass, what some people might call scruffy, is so good for other pollinators. And we know that as a whole, moths, bees, etc., are declining, across the entire country. And so that's really something. Yeah. So usually I go back and say, you can't just think for this thing, but you can do so much for so many other species as well.
A lot of work falls to charities and conservation organisations, and of course government policies as well. But before all of that can even take place, people have to be willing, and that will comes down to, okay, don't rely on someone else to do it. It's got to start at home. That kind of decision making was part of the team that was creating these films with Back from the Brink as well. Just down to what we eat, how we were travelling to sites and everything. If everyone left it to someone else, no one would do anything. Exactly. And that's when these things start slipping away.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good point to kind of end this on. Turn your garden into a wilderness, and then smash that like button, subscribe, leave a comment about your favourite bumblebee if you have one, and then watch other videos that are on our YouTube channel as well. And goodbye.